Welcome. My name is Tico and I run events here at the Strand. Before we launch into discussion of Paco Underhill's new book, How We Eat, The Brave New World of Food and Drink, I'd like to share a little bit of history about the Strand. The Strand was founded in 1927 by Benjamin Bass on 4th Avenue's Book Row. Stretching from Union Square to Astor Place, Book Row gradually dwindled from 48 bookstores. After 94 years, the Strand is the sole survivor, now run by third-generation owner Nancy Bass Whiting. We want to thank all of you for your support. Without our loyal community of book lovers and authors such as Paco, we wouldn't be here today. We are thrilled to have Paco Underhill with us for discussion of his new book, How We Eat, The Brave New World of Food and Drink.
I've had a 35-year history working with the independent bookstore industry. It's an honor to be here. Nancy, Laura, Tika, thank you. There are probably some people on this call that have attended one of my lectures before. So would you please bear with me, those veterans, while I do a little context to be able to help you better understand where I'm coming from and how I got to the book title and book that I'm about to talk about today. I often introduce myself as a refugee from the world of the university, that some 40 years ago, I was a poor part-time adjunct instructor in a doctoral program in environmental psychology, or the effect that space has on people's behavior. I was part of the crew that would go around to different cities across the country, look at the traffic patterns and topography, and try to rewrite the commercial zoning ordinances. I had my moment of epiphany on the roof of an office building in Seattle, 60 stories up. I was at the edge of the roof installing the cameras to look at the traffic patterns on the streets below, and there was a stiff wind blowing. You probably can't tell, but I'm 6'4". I tell a joke that I'm one of the only guys I know that gets height sick with 2 pairs of socks on. But up on the roof of that building, as I felt it rocking in the breeze, I promised myself that I would reinvent my profession. A week later, I was standing at a bank in New York City and realized that the same tools that I'd been using to look at how a city worked, I could probably modify them and take them inside a bank or a store or an airport or a library and start to figure out how they worked and maybe help them work better. I'd never taken a business course in my life. I knew nothing about marketing. I knew nothing about market research, but I did know a lot about how to watch people and how to understand what motivates them to do the things that they did. One of my first jobs was working for Burger King. They were testing a new salad bar concept at a restaurant in Miami. I went down with one of my colleagues. We set up our cameras, we watched, and rather than just focus on the salad bar, we focused on the entire pad, the parking lots, the kitchen, the dining room. And part of what was interesting is that there was a lot of very practical, in some ways, very logical information that we came up with that our client at Burger King had no knowledge of. If you think of it, market research is generally about asking people questions. And what people say they do and what people actually do are very different. We pointed out that in general, if a man walks into a fast food restaurant, his choice of tables where he chooses to sit is very different than if a woman walks into that same fast food restaurant. Men gravitate to tables with higher degrees of visual access. Women tend to gravitate to tables that have greater degrees of privacy. And once you think about it, it goes, man, that's so logical. We also found out that we set up a grading system for cars turning into the parking lot. And one of the things that we turned up, which has been true at almost every fast food job that we've ever done everywhere else in the world since then, is that if you're turning into that driveway with a big expensive car, you're much more likely to go through the drive-through than you are to park and walk in the restaurant. more Cadillacs in the drive-through, fewer Cadillacs parked in the parking lot. It was eye-opening. Part of what was amazing is that we were able to generate very practical, very commonsensical information. And unlike the world of academia, it wasn't the scale of the data we collected, it was the actionability that we were able to get to. It was fun. We started doing fast food restaurants. Then we got into bookstores. Then we got into telecoms. Then we got into food stores. And we have worked in grocery on 6 continents across the world. We've worked on both testing prototype stores for the chain, whether it's Pick and Pay in South Africa, Woolies in Australia, Ito Yokodo in Japan, Extra in Brazil, Éxito in Colombia, or the cross-section of merchants here in the US. But part of what was interesting then is that not only were we working for the stores, we were also working for the brands. We would go into an aisle and go, wow, how does somebody shop for coffee? How does a meat counter work? Do you know that 62% of the time that you stand at a deli counter is after you have ordered? Anyway, it was fun. And the word got around pretty fast that we were good at what we did and that we were able to make both tactical things that people could do tomorrow or next week and be able to come up with good strategic planning for what they should do in 2 months or next year. And that practicality took us all over the world. I've always been a writer of books. I am a scribbler from the time I was a little boy. I can remember my senior year in college, I had a wall filled with rejection letters. I'm not getting those same rejection letters anymore. 3 years ago, I decided to do a book about eating and drinking. I wanted to do a book because everybody eats and drinks. And the premise of the book was very, very simple. If we understand the supply chain and we understand the food chain, we can change the prescription on our glasses and be able to interact with the world of food and beverage in a much more healthy way. I wanted to write a book that helped us get to a healthier version of ourselves and then help us get to a healthier planet. And I think I've done it. There are 5 things that before the pandemic hit were happening. And those are 5 things that permeate through the book and through this next 40 minutes. First is our addiction to screens. It's changed the relationship of our eyes to our brains. I don't know whether it's good or it's bad, but it has certainly fostered some radical changes in how we visually access stuff. And you know, one of the ironies is that our eyes age in a very predictable way. The way someone sees at 25 and the way someone sees at 50 is distinctly different, and it's the same difference all over the planet. If I go to the design studios in London, New York, Paris, Hong Kong, the person at the CAD CAM screen doing the design work is generally under age 30, and they're designing for their eyes, not for ours, eyes like ours. How do we understand how we see? That's 1. 2, the most seminal event in our species since we tamed fire is birth control. It has fundamentally changed the relationship between men and women and between women and the world. Do you know that here in North America, with each passing month, the number of households where the woman is the dominant breeder goes up with each passing month? And that if you're running a telecom or a technology store, there is a direct relationship between the success of the store and the number of women working on the floor. Woman walking in the door would rather deal with a female nerd than a male nerd. The other thing that's true is the number of clueless guys doing the grocery shopping has gone up too. As mom is busy taking care of the kids, cooking, doing her job, it's husband who is sent off to the A&P. And you can see them often talking on their phone going, there's 6 different types of Dawn dishwasher soap. Which one do I get? Or how do I pick that out? We know from our frontline employees that the cluelessness rate has gone up in grocery. All the more reason to read this book. Third issue is the role of time. One of the things that we know is that the explosion of online shopping isn't necessarily about saving money, it's about saving time. And that if we look at the nature of cooking, we look at the nature of how things work, we can start figuring things out. How does time work? I can stand at a doorway and you could almost measure the stress level of somebody walking in just by the way they move. Issue 4 is what is global and what is local. One of the things about many of us is that as we've been forced to stay home, stay out of our office, we've been much more aware of our immediate surroundings, whether it's in the apartment building, whether it's in the suburb, and the idea that somehow we should be consuming more locally as opposed to globally has dawned on many of us. Do you know where the freshest blueberries are in the grocery store right now on the 27th of January? They're not in the produce section. Those blueberries came from Peru and are almost 2 weeks in transit getting to the freshest blueberries are in the frozen food section where they were picked on Cape Cod and frozen the day they were picked. This is the kind of stuff that makes a difference. Fourth issue here is we passed over a very magic moment in the history of our species when in the 1990s, when up until that point, the overwhelming majority of wealth was in the hands of an aristocracy. Today, wealth is in the hands of people who earned it in the course of their own lifetimes. Money has lost its peaches and cream complexion. I was walking in the East Village last week, and there was a Korean corn dog restaurant. Now, I spent part of my education growing up in the Far East. I know that corn dogs didn't exist in Korea 25 years ago, much less a Korean taco. But I do know that gochujang, the Korean hot sauce, goes really well with lots of different stuff. Part of what we're looking at is that in the 1970s, the typical American ate about 30 different things. The typical French peasant of the 19th century ate about 70 different things. I want you to think about the number of things that you have tried, the number of things that you have been introduced to just over the past 5 years. I love watermelon radishes. And I had no idea what they were until I was at the farmer's market and my friend John invited me to try one. It was great. I'd like to take a moment here after having gone through those 5 things and take you through a little deck. And this deck is about the topics that are covered in the book. All right. What is the start of the food chain? The start of the food chain is often in people's gardens. This is my lovely wife in our lovely garden. Part of what we found is that many of us in a post-pan world have been trying to do a little bit of growing ourselves. And part of what has been fun here is plant it, grow it, water it, pick it, cook it, eat it. Nothing could be more wonderful. This needs to be part of our future. And you know, while my wife is the avid gardener, do you know what I've gotten really good at? Is composting. Yep. Somehow getting those worms and bugs to work for me appeals to the nascent 8-year-old in me. I produce awesome compost, and that's what helps our garden grow. If I look at the other extreme, this is one of my favorite restaurants in São Paulo, Brazil, which is the restaurant is built around a tree. It is elegant dining complexity. And those are the two ends of our food eating spectrum here. One is the carrot you pick in the garden. The other is the carrot that's diced and rolled and presented to you in an elegant china dish here. Guess what this is? This is my design of a stove. If you think of it, the burners on the left are meant for saucepans, and the burners on the right are meant for frying pans. They're at different heights. It fits against the wall. Every architect that's ever been in my kitchen and looked at my stove goes, that is brilliant. I wish I'd had a patent on it. It works really well, and it's made my urban kitchen function a lot better. This is the innovation that many of us are bringing to our new lives here. Did any of you ever go to Perch? And it was a store designed for male and female menopause couples. That the guy would go, I think I'm going to get a Harley. And the woman would go, I'm 50, I think I'm going to get a designer kitchen. And part of what we're finding out here is that the fundamental relationship between us and our homes is in transition. And for many of us that can afford what those differences are, we are learning. Do you know that Walmart has had a run on small appliances? How many of you have used a slow cooker to be able to do things? Or figured out what a steam oven does? This is something where, in part because of those addiction to screens, that we can go on social media and learn about stuff that we can turn into better eating and much fancier kitchens. I want to put this in context, though, and this is, I think, a very important thing for all of us to think about. According to the last census, less than 25% of American households had a mother, father, and dependent children in it. Meaning that household of TV, Leave It to Beaver, has morphed into Friends, where how many of us live in a home where there are 3 generations, not 2? Or we live in a home where there are adult children at home. And yet, one of the things that we fundamentally know is that most suburban houses were designed for a nuclear family. And I think one of the reasons why kitchens are being rebuilt and homes are being rebuilt is because we aren't living the same way we used to. How many of you sit down for a dinner like this? How often over the course of a month? The answer is many of us are making the choice not to eat in our dining rooms, but to eat in our kitchens. And the number of people who are touching the stove is fewer than the number of people touching the refrigerator. How do we know that? Because we've set up that same monitoring system inside of people's homes. Do you know what's also happening? We are going to get to a digital kitchen where it isn't Alexi or Siri. It's a kitchen that keeps track of everything that's there. They know what's running out. They know what's on the shelf. They know what's on the refrigerator. They know what's in the trash can. And they might be able to say, oh, here's my shopping list. Can I order it? And will you pick it up on your way home? We know that there's a digital kitchen that is in the makings. Samsung, LG are right there, The problem that they're having is that software runs out in 2 years, but a refrigerator lasts for 5 years. But did you know something? That if you have a refrigerator that's more than 5 years old, a new refrigerator will pay for itself and lower energy costs in 2 years. Listen, it is a brave new world out there. And this is the epicenter of our home. Do you know that once we reach age 40, roughly 80% of our weekly purchases are the same thing? Why do we have to go buy it in packaging that's meant to scream at us from the shelf when we've already made our commitment? We are on the cusp here of having to do something differently. Could we order by subscription? The answer is yes. Could we do it in a way that's in recyclable containers or repurposable or compostable containers? The answer is yes. It is time for us to look at the grocery store and go, man, you are an archaic entity, and it's time to blow you up and rethink you. We know that, ordering online and picking up at the store works, but you know what? We need to rethink how it happens. I have been to places, for example, grocery store chains in the Middle East, where there's a covered place for you to wait. And there's somebody out there who would be very happy to sell you a cold beverage. Okay? This is something that is in the midst of change. And that we know that making the connection between the trucking bay in the back of the store and the parking lot up front is something we have to rethink. And it's going to happen. Do you know that the basic design of a grocery store hasn't changed since the 1930s? If you look at the two farthest sections away from the front door, one is the dairy section, the other is the meat. It's often in the back left or the back right-hand corner. It's designed to be able to hold you longer, but we need to be more honest about getting us in and out the door in a way that we don't feel as if we're wasting our time. I can tell you that the person who designed that shelf is probably 5'11". We live in a grocery world that's historically owned by men, managed by men, designed by men, and yet we expect women to be our dominant shoppers. How many images do I have of somebody struggling to get something off the top shelf? We can look at this and go, on the one hand, it's funny. On the other hand, it's pathetic. We can do it better. That dairy case in the back left-hand corner, man, it needs to move, particularly now, because you know that in other parts of the world, I can get milk in a drugstore. In parts of Germany, I can get milk in a vending machine. I don't even have to go in the door. There should be a better way of doing it. Theatrical lighting. Those vegetables are lit as if they were going to go on screen. They look better inside the store than they'll ever look inside your kitchen. I want you to look at the way things are displayed and the lighting and recognize the reality of it. Do you know that 20% of the fresh produce that we buy, we end up throwing out? Mine goes into the compost heap, but still, we need to become better about what we consume and how we consume it. And being aware of that theatrical lighting, that's one easy way of doing it. Have any of you seen stuff like this? This is my local Target. Man, empty shelves here. The supply chain issues here are very real. And we have to figure out a way of being able to deal with it and be able to understand what our options are. We don't want to be surprised. We want to understand what our options are. And in understanding our options, we become smarter consumers. Do you know what a slotting fee is? Meaning that companies will pay the grocery store for the right to be at eye level. This means that in general, if you want to find bargains, not necessarily in the cereal section, you look up and down. I have friends who will tell me that if there's a cereal that has a certain percentage of sugar in it, should we really let it be on the cereal aisle, or should we stick it on the candy aisle? We as consumers need to start voicing some point of view about what people can get away with. How come I can buy a cranberry juice cocktail where the cranberry content in it is tiny? Come on now, guys. It's time to start demanding something better. Anyone know what halal meat is? I love going to Toronto. It is the most ethnically diverse city on earth. Halal meat is like kosher meat. It is for a Muslim audience. Part of what we know is that there are places where having a halal meat section is critical to being able to set up for a particular segment of the population. How do we in the broader world of grocery understand who it is that's walking in our door? That there are places where having halal meat or having gochujang, the Korean hot sauce, is absolutely essential, and the places it makes no sense at all. This is, again, one of the challenges that we face in getting local in our food industry, is understanding who our customers are. I love this image from Brazil. This is the vegetable section where they're trying to describe what the vegetables are. Isn't that cool? And there is a flower section where somebody is using, a roll of craft paper to be able to project freshness. Do you know that the cutting edge of the modern supermarket left North America a long time ago? Go to the Middle East, go to Brazil, go to places in the world where money is young, and you see stores where somebody has come, they've looked at the Kroger's, they've looked at Walmart, and they've gone back to their own markets and reinvented. I can ask, when was the last time a major US grocery executive was in a Soriano in Mexico, much less an Extra in Brazil? And they look at you as if, what are you talking about? Educating to make the sale. This is from my local Big Y, a store that just opened, where they've done something, they've copied something that I've seen in other parts of the world, which is they're telling you what kind of beer to eat with what kind of food, what kind of beer to drink with what kind of food. Doesn't that make sense to you? Part of what this means is that the era of everybody buying Budweiser or buying Miller is probably come to an end. And that's because people are understanding the equity in choices. Right? And you know what? This is part of what makes our new life interesting, because we're starting to learn stuff. Global versus local. This is Icelandic yogurt. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I'm importing yogurt or a style of yogurt from Iceland. I want you to know this is where my yogurt starts, at a farm nearby. I can see the cow. They're less than 50 feet away. I go to that cabinet, I get raw milk. I stuff some cash in that box. I take that delicious raw milk home and I make yogurt from it. Am I healthier because of it? The answer is yes. One of the things about how we eat is that I took my own advice and I lost 25 pounds, and it was easy. Some of it was just getting better at getting local. This is some of the scary part. This is from a market in Westchester. That is frozen guinea pig for an Ecuadorian customer, just like the halal meat. Have you seen the explosion in dairy-free frozen desserts? One of the things that's really interesting is that there are lots of us that have lactose intolerance issues. And yet our knowledge that there are types of yogurt that have no lactose in it and would be very good for us and are a lot cheaper than dairy-free options and better for us. Hey, it's time to educate ourselves. This is one way of getting local. Welcome to Texas here. Chicken shit, aw shit, special shit, good shit. This is spices made for Texas. Would this sell in Dubuque, Minnesota? I don't think so. It wouldn't sell in Baudette, Nova Scotia either. But in parts of Texas, in Uvalde here, it is hot as a pistol. I think we're going to see something because one of the things that we're watching is people are getting local and recognizing I don't have to have a huge business. I can have a specialized business and I can earn the loyalty of my local audiences. Oh, shit. Do you know what this is? This is milk in an Israeli supermarket in a compostable baglet. What happens is that you buy a container. That bag fits inside the container. You cut the corner off. And you know what? It's about time that we got away from the 1950s trucking that governed how we package stuff. There are better ways of doing it. There are better ways of not only getting to something that's recyclable, but I was talking to an English packaging designer who said, it's going to be soon that I can make a package out of birdseed. And that once you finish with that box, you can feed it to the birds outside. Does that sound cool? I think so. This is the Soriano in Mexico, which is a forklift truck store. I mean, part of what they've done is to design a store to lower labor costs. And they've done a really nice job. Somebody comes up with a forklift truck and moves sections of the store into the back room where a team restocks them. They have been able to cut their labor cost by somewhere between 20 and 25%. Do you see anything like this here in the US? The answer is no. I love going to Mexico City. There are discount intrusions. This is an Aldi or a Lidl store. Has anyone seen the Lidl or Aldi's? They have some of our biggest merchants quaking in their boots because they're not about slotting fees. They're about good buying. This is a store designed for an educated consumer with modest income. And you know what? It's one of the major disruptions that's gone across Europe. And it's one of the major disruptions that's going to accelerate here as the pandemic moves on. Anyone follow Marion Nestle? Marion Nestle is the goddess. She is the former chairwoman of the nutrition department at NYU and is one thorn in the side of big food companies. She is one of the ones who's leading that charge for us to be able to go, you know, if it's 40% sugar, it shouldn't be here. I was very happy I was able to get her that early box of Baby Shark, Baby Shark. Did you ever try Baby Shark cereal? Man, it lasted for about 10 minutes. But anyway, Marion Nestle, look her up, guys. She is awesome. I get a daily feed from her blog, which I love. Hey, this is the K11 shopping mall in Shanghai. Do you know what they do? They grow the vegetables that are served in the restaurants, right there on the concourse of the shopping mall. The farm to table stuff isn't a matter of miles, it's a matter of meters. Do you think they can charge more because somebody can see where the vegetables come from? The answer is yes. Isn't it time we tried to do stuff like that here? I also love this, which is a mushroom farm inside the shopping mall. Does that reinforce the idea of fresh? Do you know what you do? You go in and you point to a mushroom and they pick it for you, and they'll wrap it up so you can take it home, or they'll cook it for you right there. Would you eat more mushrooms if you had a mushroom farm and a mushroom curator to be able to help you get there? The answer is unequivocally yes. This is part of what the new frontier of eating and drinking is getting us to consume better and to consume a broader cross-section of stuff. I love that this is a nutritional vending machine in an airport in Spain. Gluten-free, lactose-free, sugar-free. Man, why can't I get one of those in the subway systems in New York, much less the train station I'll be in New Haven tomorrow? Let's get beyond the Coke and candy machines and get to something else. Would you buy stuff from a machine like this? The answer is yes. Do you know that there are vending stores in Singapore where you can walk in at any time of day or night and buy stuff out of multiple vending machines? Come on now, guys. It's time to rethink. This is one of my favorite images, which is from Turkey, which is a floating market. This is a concept that happened in the 1920s, and I think is ripe for reinvention. Why does that grocery store have to be open 24/7? Could you take a store like this and cross it with a farmer's market and take it to different communities and bring the grocery store closer to us? The answer is it would work in New York City. It would work in a lot of smaller cities. It would work in a lot of smaller villages. If the 20th century let us get big, the 21st century is letting us get small. I think this is one of the ways that we're going to start consuming 10 years from now. The store is going to come to us. Man, the farmer's market is just exploding. We're finding out that if I'm a good creative farmer, I have 4 acres of land, I have solar paneling, I have greenhouses, I grow some exotic or do a little processing here. I talk to farmers in the Hudson Valley that are making very decent middle-class incomes. The family farm that was declared dead in the 1950s is alive and prospering. It's alive and prospering because people are doing it smarter, and they're finding ways to get directly to us. That if you can eliminate the middleman, look at that killer kielbasa. Do you know what kielbasa is? It's Polish sausage, $10.30 a pound. Pasture raised on our farm, farrow to finish. Would you buy that? The answer is yes, I would. This is, again, part of what makes farmers markets exciting, is we get to try new things and we get to meet the people who grew it. I like it, don't you? That artisanal farming here and that light processing, do you know what is scaring the hell out of the big liquor companies, much less the big beer companies, is the number of people who are making spirits and wine and beer locally. If you go to the farmer's market in New York City, you can buy whiskey and rum that's made within 100 miles, and it's not as if it came from across the planet. And part of what that farmer is finding is, if I take that fruit and rather than just sell you the fruit, make a little jam from it, the margins on that jam are considerably better. This is an exciting time for us. And the way in which the modern farm is evolving, and the number of people making the choice to be able to make it locally, serve it locally, and finding ways to get directly to us. This is one of the more exciting things that we've seen. This is in Brooklyn. This is an organic hydroponic garden. Thanks to the pot farmers of British Columbia and the pot farmers of the Netherlands, the organic hydroponic farming techniques have exploded. I can take a shipping container and it can grow the same number of vegetables that I would grow on 3 acres of garden. We are looking at the fact that I can put that kind of a garden on the roof of a grocery store or in the parking lot. And that, again, that distance of not farm to table being miles, but close by, where you could just go pick it. But the problem is, how can we teach Americans to eat more greens? Have you ever eaten basil for breakfast? I have. It's pretty good. Basil, lettuce, arugula. This is the future of farming and the future of health, is being able to eat something that's grown locally and grown and picked within hours rather than days. I want to just set up something here. If you go to a Mexican convenience store, there is beer that is kept just below freezing, because with the alcohol content in beer, I can take it so it isn't just ice cold, but it is even more than ice cold. And the guys are willing to pay a premium for that, to have that super iced beer. You can see them walk in on a hot summer day, pick it up, and that bottle is open before they get out the door. That's what's going on with the guys. On the other hand, at the other side of the spectrum is people recognizing that if you want to be a good hostess and somebody comes to your house for dinner and you would go, would you like a beer? And your guest says, well, what kind of beer do you have? And you went, I've got these 12 different kinds of beers because I can buy them by the bottle. We're starting to see this here in the US, but this was something that they did in Brazil years ago. Years ago, they would not only sell you the different types of beer, but they'd sell you the different types of glasses to drink it in. Let's consume better. Part of what we found too is that when we did something like this, the number of women shopping the beer section went up dramatically. How do we change the way girls are going out? And one of the ways I am looking at restaurants now, when I move through New York City, is I look in the window and I go, are there more men or are there more women in it? And if there are more women in it, I know that women are more discerning. I have an interest in a lovely vegan wine bar in the East Village called Ruffian, and 65% of our customers are female. I want you to look and see who's going out. And the number of tables which are made up of women having a meal with other women. There is a fundamental shift going on in our broader restaurant culture. The meals are getting smaller. They're getting tastier. The menus are being more interactive. Haven't you looked at a menu using your phone? There is a shift going on in our world, and it's for the good. Just in the same way, this was designed for females who wanted to get happy but not tight. And you know what? The same thing is going on, if you think of beer, is going on with wine too. The French, the Spaniards, and the Italians have lost control of the wine market. Yep. You can get a good wine made in Chile, a good wine made in Argentina, a good wine made in South Africa, or a good wine made in the Hudson River Valley, right close by. That revolution in the broader world of adult beverage is spirits, it's beer, it's wine. Do you know that they're now making wine in 49 states across the country? 49 states. I think Alaska is the only place that there isn't an established winery. And I'm probably wrong because my data is probably a little old. Hey, have you walked in and gone, let's get beyond Budweiser and whatever? Wow, ginger beer. Look at that lineup. Do you know one of the things that we've been doing is we've been interviewing people as they go into a bar and a restaurant. We've been asking them to put on eye tracking glasses. And one of the things that we found, which was much to the surprise of our male researchers, is that women's choice in the beverage they order is often governed by what they're wearing. The guys go, what do you mean? And the women went, well, if I'm wearing a white dress, am I going to order a glass of red wine? The answer is no. Hey, brand new world. I want to sum up here because I want to take some questions. Retail is slated for change. Buy online, pick up at the store. Packaging reforms are going to come. Custom blending from laundry soap to pet means that the manufacturing get closer to the customer, and the smart home and the smart customer are here to stay. Women are going out. We're drinking coffee in the right places. France, Spain, and Italy lose control of wine. Oh yeah, the prize-making scotch last year was made in Taiwan. It's time for us to start eating better. And thank you, Marion Nessel. I am a real fan. I have three things which I believe in with messianic fervor. The first is that amenability and profitability are linked. The second oh, come on now. Is that giving good store or giving good product is the interrelationship between how you sell it and what it is. And finally, I believe fervently in rubber-soled shoes, meaning that it is often important for us to go out and be able to experience something face up. Thank you. This is a book that will make you laugh. It's a book that is positive. It's a book that when you put it down, you'll see the world around you a little differently than when you picked it up.
Thank you, Paco. We do have some questions.
Okay.
Let's start with the first one here. From Anonymous, how do you think people's food shopping habits were impacted by the pandemic? How does your research translate to online sales environments?
Well, I think this is a very interesting question. Certainly, there are many more people doing some of their shopping online. One of the things that we know is that if you're a family, it is easier to stay on budget if you're shopping online than if you're walking in store. And you're also turning off the wine habit of kids. And if you're a young family, saving time, saving some money, we're just better off. But the other part of that is the cluelessness here. Here, can I get back to my screen? Okay, much better, much better. There we go. So yes, I think it is changed precipitously, but it's also changed based on where it is in the country you are. And part of what we're finding is that the way people are doing their grocery shopping in rural settings versus urban settings is very, very different. And how do we get there? The way someone shops in Texas and the way someone shops in Minnesota, while some things are the same, a lot of things are different.
Another question here from John Holland. I work in retail research. We learn so much about shopper intent from their queries. What are you learning with regards omni-channel opportunities that blend online and meat space shopping, and eating experiences?
First of all, thanks to our screens, there is no more separation between our physical and our digital worlds. That this is something where we are using our phones to be able to research. We're using our phones to be able to educate, but we're also using the phones in the context of a physical space. Let's remember something, which is that we still live in an analog world. And while digital can be helpful, that meeting of the physical and digital world is something we have to pay very close attention to.
We have a question from Carolyn White. Could you talk about the trends in non-alcoholic wine, beer, mocktails, and bars?
Okay. You know what? This is, again, based on the visitation of women who are going in and going, I don't want to get tight. I would like to be able to drink something that is good for me. The premise that somehow bars correlate with alcoholism is something that the world is addressing. And you know what? Part of what it is also getting at is the question of ethnicity. Here's a story. I have a friend in the UAE who lives in Dubai. And one of the things he was complaining about is that when he comes to visit New York or Paris and goes to a fancy restaurant and doesn't order wine, he's often gets the restaurant or the waitress or the waiter angry. He says, I'm a good Muslim, okay? Whereas if there is a option for a mocktail or a non-alcoholic beer or a wine, he would gladly take it. I think this is about giving us a broader assortment of choices.
We have a question here. Do you think that curbside pickup from the grocer is a trend with staying power?
Ask that again.
Do you think that curbside pickup from the grocer is a trend with staying power?
I think that there's going to be a fundamental revolution in the design of the grocery store and the grocery store pad, okay? And that somehow that connection between the trucking bay in the back and the parking lot up front needs to change. And we've seen a number of examples of it. Whether it's something taking a lesson from the drive-through so that I make arrangements to pick it up and drive through, and somebody doesn't have to wheel it out to my car, but I get to it. Yeah, it's time for us to rethink this process. And yes, that curbside stuff is here to stay, but it's not going to stay in the way that we know it now. It's going to progress.
In conjunction with that question, there's another one that's somewhat similar from Henrietta. It's like, what are your thoughts on grocery delivery? Do you think it hurts smaller grocery stores?
You know what? I can look at an Aldi or a Lidl or a Trader Joe's that is often a third the size of your modern supermarket and do a great job. I know that virtually every major big box retailer is looking to find ways to shrink the format. Simply because with better supply chain process, better store stocking, just like we saw in that image in Mexico, that there's a better way of doing it.
We have time for one last question. The last question is, how do you do your data collection in homes, and how has your collection practices changed in the shift from shopping to food?
Okay. When I stepped off into the world of market research, there were two techniques that people used. One was asking people questions, focus groups, online surveys, whatever. The second was sales research, which was to look at the data that came out of your register. I think part of what we've seen is with artificial intelligence, we are able to include a measure of observation or tracking into the equation. One of the things that we know in the 21st century is that collecting data is really easy. Finding what you do with it and how to apply it is much more difficult. And one of the things that we've gotten to is using multiple methodologies in the same project. And while if we do some online work, if we do some interviews, if we do some mobile eye tracking, they never tell us exactly the same thing, but they give us a sense of what the dimension of the problem or the opportunities are. And I think a creative researcher in the 21st century is somebody who isn't married to one particular data collection process, but is comfortable using multiple ones.
Thank you so much, Paco, for such an insightful conversation. Thank you for everyone that attended the event. If you'd like to purchase a copy of the book, I have put the link in the chat below, right over here. And thank you everyone for attending tonight, and have a good night.
And I will be coming into the Strand tomorrow. And if you send a request, I will sign that book for you. Okay.
Don't forget to purchase it in the chat below. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good night.
All right. Bye-bye.